I got you, Biss. You're not falling. Sliding in the back end. Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan. He's a Corgi. And today we're going to continue our discussion about alternative medicine treatments and how you know when your dog or cat or horse may need one of these treatments. So today we're going to start with the one that I think is very commonly known to people, but not everyone knows very much about it, and that is acupuncture. And acupuncture is an ancient Chinese healing modality. I have to get my other dog here. Centuries old. There's a lot of wisdom in it. And as I've said many times, when I was in physical therapy school while we were ultrasounding, you could feel the increased energy over what is considered the acupuncture points on our arms while we were ultrasounding. So there is definitely increased energy in those points. Now, as we learned from Wikipedia, pretty much every alternative therapy, even acupuncture, which has been around for centuries, is considered not real science. However, many of us have benefited from acupuncture treatments. I had a senior lady with chronic knee pain, and the knee is connected to a particular acupuncture point on the shoulder. And when I did acupressure there, her knee pain was gone as long as I was doing it. So I referred her to a nice Western medicine seeming acupuncturist, and she was very reluctant to go, partially because she doesn't like needles. And in fact, one treatment, her knee pain, which she had had for years, 50% better with my work, completely disappeared, as far as I know, for the last 15 years since she had one acupuncture treatment. So one of the things she discovered was that acupuncture needles don't look like the needles you use when you get a vaccination. They are tiny little hair-like filaments. I mean, they really are as thin as a hair, some of them. And so it's not what you think it's going to be. Now, because those points are so energetically charged, it's not always painless when you get this tiny little filament stuck into your skin or your dog's. And I personally am one of the rare people who have severe adverse reactions to acupuncture. So for me, it was very painful, particularly in one point in my knee, which is for joint issues, because I've had so many massive injuries from horses, even though I've only had maybe 4 falls in 50 years of riding. Anyway, that one point was so tender on me, it was pretty terrible. But generally, that's not the case. Most people find it a little uncomfortable. Many, the vast majority of people sleep through a session and finally feel some relaxation, because after all, when you need acupuncture, you're out of balance, and getting into balance is extremely relaxing. It takes so much energy out of you to be out of balance and function. And the same is true for our pets. If they are out of balance and they need acupuncture, the acupuncture is going to be very relieving for them. And if you are going to an acupuncturist that is not very good, and we have a few that are good and bad in my area, often you'll notice that your animal is irritated by it and trying to get the needles out of their body. And I had a friend with a husky, and every time, she's so hairy. When the needles went in, you couldn't even find them in the fur, and the dog would shake and more than half of them would come out. And then my friend would go home and find needles around the house for the next week, and the person doing it didn't seem the least concerned. When we went to a different person with that dog for acupuncture, he used fewer needles. They stayed in the dog for the 20 minutes, and he knew where they were and pulled them out before the dog left. So that's the difference between a good acupuncture treatment and one that's less than ideal. It's not to say that the first one didn't have some positive effects for that dog, but it certainly wasn't the positive effects of the second one. So in acupuncture, it's all part of traditional Chinese medicine, and there's a whole system for that with, as my sister has been talking about, food energetics being part of it. 5-element theory is part of it. I've had my house feng shuied for 5-element balance. So that helps with peacefulness and calm in your life and generating income, because I work in my house. And so having balance in my house is important to me. And so I used a feng shui person, and feng shui itself is an Asian art. And so having that balance in my house has been helpful to me, just like acupuncture would be helpful for your pet or you. So really the Bible for a lot of acupuncture information for people, if you want to look it up, is 4 Paws, 5 Directions. This is a pretty famous book, and it's by Cheryl Swartz, who is a vet, and it has pictures of the meridians, and it tells you what different points relate to. And like here, this is a page that shows you some of the meridians. Excuse me, Tristan, you have to hold on by yourself. See the red lines? You have these things called meridians going through your body or your pet's body. And along these meridians, energy flows. And if there's any kind of restriction along those lines, then you have a backup and a bit of a blockage, and that creates the disbalance and the disharmony in the body. So you stimulating those points through acupuncture or acupressure can bring about more circulation through those meridians, and then more health to the organs and areas of the body that they correspond to, and then more health for your dog. Acupuncture, I know, kept our dog Belle going much longer than her hospice care, through her hospice care, because of her weekly acupuncture appointments. Yes, and this is something I want to address. Many times people don't even look for acupuncture for their pet until they are in hospice care, or because the pet is just not being helped by Western medicine. And this is fine, but it's often more beneficial to seek out some of these alternative medicine techniques before your dog has met a lot of failure in Western medicine techniques. Better to use both when your dog is healthier and less disabled and younger and stronger, because then your dog will achieve the maximum strength for the maximum amount of time. And certainly many animals I've worked with, I've referred for acupuncture in their senior days and last months and weeks or year of their life, because acupuncture can help kind of turn back the clock on a lot of things that are catching up with your dog, a lot of chronic diseases like arthritis and inflammation in the body, and even visual changes and hearing changes. Sometimes taste and smell diminishes as they age, and a lot of senior dog issues can be benefited tremendously by acupuncture. And acupuncture is a very broad subject. I'm giving you a quick overview today, but one of the things I found with my dogs that was really helpful, and a pretty famous vet named Alan Schoen, who used to be in my area, who now lives on the West Coast, he was really a bit of a pioneer in acupuncture in animals nationwide as a vet, for sure. He actually started one of the veterinary courses they teach in animal acupuncture. But he was one of the first people also to use electroacupuncture, particularly with dogs with DM. And of course, having a Corgi, DM is something I think about a lot. And it's degenerative myelopathy. It's like ALS in humans. And so when you use electroacupuncture, you insert the needles and then you hook them up to a little device that puts electrical current into where those needles are. And so that was really helpful for my dog, particularly Comet. I don't think my sister was doing electroacupuncture, and we weren't even sure that Winnie had DM. Like, we knew he did, but there wasn't a test when I had him to find out for sure. And he certainly didn't have a herniated disc. Everything about him said DM. But certainly for DM, when you've got like these massive nerve losses going on in your dog, it's really, really, really helpful to get electric acupuncture. And I know on several of the wheel corgi groups and the wheel dog groups, lots of people report good benefits from the electroacupuncture. And it is well worth getting it, even if you have to stretch your budget, excuse you, Biscuit, and do it once a month. That's still going to be more beneficial than not doing it. And I saw immediate changes in my dogs. Now, as a physical therapist, we use something called e-stim, which seems like electroacupuncture, but it's really not, because when we use e-stim, we're stimulating the muscles to twitch. Electroacupuncture is on the meridians, and I think more connected to the nervous system than just stimulating the muscles. So electroacupuncture is really very useful for a dog, any dog, even a dog with disc problems who is losing the use of their hind end. Acupuncture is super useful for pets when they have Lyme disease, any systemic disease. You know, I've had dogs that I've seen with leptospirosis, a bunch of the other tick diseases, and acupuncture can be really useful to kind of calm that down. And then I had a horse once that I was seeing who had just chronic diarrhea, and it was a real problem, and he was so deficient. And my sister actually just did a talk, which I'll post, about the difference between yin and yang. So this horse was deficient and he had this chronic diarrhea, and we put him on some Chinese herbs to balance him for like a year, and he was better but not cured. And we just did intensive acupuncture treatments during craniosacral therapy with this horse for a month, every week, acupuncture and cranial on the same day at the same time. And that cured it. No more diarrhea. He had had diarrhea for like 10 years. He was so out of balance. He was an old bay-colored racehorse. And the owners just really thought he'd never be different than that. And then it was because he was old, and certainly they weren't going to change what he was eating. And I was so impressed by the difference in him after the acupuncture and cranial treatments together. And that acupuncturist we had wasn't doing electroacupuncture with him, just straight up needles. And it was pretty fascinating. She would assess him and put the needles in where she thought they needed to go. And then I would do something in cranial work called arcing and put my hands where they needed to go. And it was amazing. As I took up the slack in the tissue, you could see the needle turn clockwise, which in acupuncture is strengthening when you twist the needle clockwise, weakening when it goes the other way. So I would have my hands on this horse and the needle would turn clockwise as I met the resistance of the tissue. And then as it started to release, the needle would gradually, slowly turn counterclockwise. And then often, more than once, the needle would just fall out when I was done a release in that general area. Fascinating. To me, that just gives credibility to both modalities, because you could see that something I was doing was affecting the horse. And I might not even be on that exact area where the needle was. I might be on his shoulder and the needle was on his back, which of course the whole horse is connected. That's part of the point with alternative medicine, is that we're looking at the whole animal as one being. And so that was pretty fascinating. And the horse amazingly got so much better. And he stayed that way for the next 9 years till he passed away. It was pretty remarkable, the change in him. And I had, the horse's owner skeptical but open, and the horse's caretaker, for sure this is not going to work. He's been on the herbs. They cost a fortune, blah, blah, blah. Well, lo and behold, we got to the root of the problem and we're able to bring him back up so that he was not so deficient, and help him recover. So acupuncture can be really useful. Here is my Acu dog, which has the points on him for a lot of the acupuncture points. You can see a few on his ears. There's one right between the middle of the nose. There's shock points on the ends of the ears, which we use in T-Touch, which you can see here. And there are also books on acupressure for your dogs. And it is well worth getting a book on acupressure for your dog, because you can do that yourself. And the books, I think, are like 15, 18 bucks. And if you don't have an acupuncture vet in your area, a lot of these books, using a combination of 4 Paws 5 Directions and an acupressure book and T-Touches, you can really do a lot to benefit your dog. So if you really are on a budget and think this would benefit your dog, try some acupressure on these points. When I had Comet, he had so many things going on. Among his issues was a giant lipoma on his tummy. And as a dog with DM, laying on that was not going to be good for the long run. I mean, it was as big as my hand. Now, he was a much bigger dog than Tristan. He weighed like 32 pounds when he was slim and trim, and Tristan weighs like 18. So I somewhere came across, maybe I even Googled it, what to do for a lipoma acupuncture-wise. And of course, I wasn't going down to see my sister for a while, so I thought I would just try what I could do. I looked up the points that you use to remove a lipoma. Flipped Comet over, he didn't really like that. And I used a combination of T-Touch and my tuning forks on the points for that lipoma. And I worked on it twice in one day. You know, I was trying to really memorize where those points were in case I had other dog clients with lipomas. And, you know, these are fatty tumors. They're nothing significant, and they're not cancer by any means. And so, lo and behold, the next day, the thing was half the size it had been. I was shocked. And I did it again for a week, and pretty soon this giant thing the size of my hand was down to the size of a quarter. And it kind of stayed at that point. But it was so much easier for Comet to lay on his chest and his tummy when he had bad DM because that lipoma was gone. So these are the kinds of things you can do with your own dog if you have access to some of these materials. An acupressure book, the 4 Paws, 5 Directions, and certainly you can Google some things, but be wary because not everything on Google is going to be accurate. And I found some discrepancies on those points for the lipoma, but I used my common sense and my other references to try to figure out what I was going to pursue with that. So acupuncture can be a really important part of your dog's health maintenance. A lot of people with younger dogs just bring them for acupuncture twice a year just to keep them at their maximum capacity. It's nice to do that around the change of seasons in the spring and the fall because that's when your dog's undergoing a lot of stress with the change in the weather, and he is likely to be more out of balance at those times. For many of us, like me in the Northeast, I have, terrible tick problems here. And Lyme disease is so common. Many animals get it every year. We have to treat them every fall. And in that case, the acupuncture is really helpful to help break up that disbalance caused by the Lyme disease and the tick-borne diseases. So acupuncture, I feel, is part of a good maintenance plan for your pet. Certainly if you're competing with your dog in something like agility or, any kind of field trial work where they're really active and really using their body, you might want to go for acupuncture treatments more than that, once a month, every 6 weeks, or every 8 weeks, because it is a really helpful thing to keep your dog in balance. Not everyone lives near where there's a vet that does acupuncture with animals. And certainly when I had my horse, he got a lot of acupuncture treatments. I was lucky that Alan Schoen was in the area and then I knew him well. And he came over and did a lot of acupuncture for my horse, which I know helped him. He had, been a very high level dressage horse, an FEI horse, and he had some aches and pains from being a high level performance animal. So even if you have a cat even, I would still recommend acupuncture twice a year for your cat, just to keep him in balance. Cats, as they age, have a lot of organ problems. And one of the best things about acupuncture, I think, is that it addresses systemic problems caused from organ issues. Now, of course, a lot of cats have organ issues because of bad food choices by their humans. Cats really can't eat dry food at all. It really dehydrates the kidneys and the liver over time and leads to a lot of cat problems, including not using the box properly and having a lot of diabetes and things like that when they age. If you think about the moisture content of a dead mouse versus a piece of dry cat food, very, very different. And so cats are used to eating small rodents with a 75% or 70% moisture content. You take that out when you make kibble and you've got a sick kitty. So especially if for whatever reason you need to feed your cat kibble, and some people do, definitely be getting acupuncture treatments for your kitty on a pretty regular basis, 4 times a year or something. So that's a little bit about acupuncture. Most animals sleep when the needles are in, and it's often many of the people I know that do acupuncture are also chiropractic vets now, so you can often get 2 treatments, so you don't have to pay for that visit in and only get 1 treatment. A lot of people make it part of their pet's wellness visits once or twice a year, and it does help them. I don't recommend doing vaccines at the same time as getting acupuncture, although some people might, because when they're getting a vaccine, it's going to create stress in the body, and the acupuncture can help that. But if that's your only acupuncture treatment for the year, you're not getting the full benefit for the dog's general state with the acupuncture. But yes, it's fine to do it when you're getting a vaccine. And if your dog is sensitive to vaccines, like if you have a Chihuahua or a Yorkie or something like that, and you have to get that rabies shot for your town to register your dog, then acupuncture at that time might be super helpful. But I would definitely schedule a follow-up session maybe 6-8 weeks later to keep that dog in balance. And then, as I mentioned, my sister is doing a new book about food energetics based on 5-element theory and Chinese medicine, and that is super, super important aspect of acupuncture and Chinese medicine to keep in mind with our pets. What we feed them really, really matters, and I have seen huge changes in my dogs over the years. I remember, I think my first Corgi, we were feeding him science diet in a 50-pound bag. It's amazing that little guy lived. and that was common. That was considered good food at the time. And then I met somebody who had wanted to go to school to be a nutritionist and ended up being a rec therapist. And she researched what she fed her dogs up one side and down the other. And she said, you have to stop feeding kibble. And I think you should feed Triumph, which was at the time a premium canned pet food. And so I did that. And my God, the vitality in my dog was so much better. But I didn't know 5-element theory about food yet, and so I was feeding my hot little Corgi chicken, which was making him hotter, and that was creating other issues in his body with inflammation. And, you know, he was a very well-behaved dog, but he certainly was very active. So the chicken was kind of feeding his fire, and that wasn't a great thing. But I've learned so much over the last 20 years since that poor guy was eating science diet out of a bag, including that when you have a small dog, not a good idea to buy a huge bag. It gets moldy, it gets ants in it, it gets whatever, and it's not holding a good amount of nutritional value when it's sitting there in your closet or in the store for a long time to feed my little Tristan a half a cup of food. So if you can get smaller bags for smaller dogs, that's a great idea as well. So if you must feed kibble. So that's a little bit about Chinese medicine and acupuncture for your pets. Certainly a great idea for seniors, dogs on hospice care, and certainly brilliant work for feeding your animals responsibly. And also check out acupressure, which is something you can do just rubbing the point. And certainly we should all know about the shock point at the tip of your dog's ear. If something ever happens to him, my God, there was pictures online of a poor Corgi that was attacked by a German Shepherd. Oh, just terrible bites all over him. Doing this point on the tips of his ears would really benefit him at the time of the accident. And certainly the poor human who had to stand there watching their dog be attacked like this, when they get home and their dog is safe, it's a good thing to do your own ear points too, just to bring some balance back into your system. I can't imagine the trauma of watching your dog being attacked by another dog and trying to save him. Luckily, I think that Corgi's going to do fine, but the shock points on the ears are something you should always know about. Even a bee sting, or even a fly bite. I had a dog at a barn once who had a horsefly bite him on the muzzle, like right here by his eye, and oh my God, it swelled up. And so we were doing the shock points on the ends of his ear to help take some of that trauma out of that experience. And of course, the poor dog was wiping his paw, and we were trying to get ice on it. And thank God I was at a fancy barn where we had ice. So anyway, these are some things that you should know about acupuncture for your pet. And we will continue along looking at some of these alternative medicine modalities and what they're about and why and how you might want to choose them for your pet. And acupuncture certainly is commonly available now and certainly super useful. So this has been Tristan Corgi and Sally Morgan for an episode of Conversations with a Corgi, where we talked about what is acupuncture. Oh, hi, Pat in Florida. It's like Florida here, 75 and humid. You'll stinky Corgi still. And Tristan didn't get his bath yet. I have hurt my abductor pollicis muscle on my thumb, and that's the Corgi dumping water on thumb. So I don't know when he'll be getting his bath. I hope he's clean when he has to be on our TV channel on Friday, but he might still be smelling bad, even though he'll look pretty. Hopefully I can give him a bath between now and then, and certainly before November, because he's part of my TED Talk. So, and for those of you who are interested and live in my area, the TED Talk is You can find tickets for it at TEDx Women East Hampton. And they're about $25, and they have a reception and things. It's going to be a really fun day. And my TED Talk is about making animal connections and how that helps you in many ways. So I look forward to that. I finally have a draft written, lots of memorizing to come. And also in other news, right out the window here yesterday, a female moose was there for hours. I was able to go outside. I'll try to post the pictures. They aren't super good, but I was only like 30 feet from her across the stream. And she just stood there looking at me, and we had a conversation. And I love mooses so much. So it was such a joy to see a moose. I've lived in New England a long time. They're all over Maine. They're not so much in Massachusetts. I saw one once when I was riding my horse. I saw one. My neighbors up the hill have told me that there's been one in my side yard on occasion, but finally I got to see her, and she was so beautiful. So yay for mooses. Tomorrow we'll be back with another episode. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.